Bueno, yo quería dar la bienvenida a Carol, que nos da esta entrevista, que es la autora de este libro, no sé de este libro que es sobre la vida de Bill Thetford, el coescriba del curso de milagros. ¿Querés traducir, Rosmarie?
Sí, eh, welcome Harold home. She's the author of the book Don't Forget to Laugh from William Thetford, and that's the purpose of our meeting.
Okay.
Bueno, nos gustaría, Carol, que nos comentes un poquito de tu libro sobre Bill, de cómo lo conociste o cualquier anécdota que tengas ganas de compartir.
Could you, Harold, tell us about your experience with William and anything that is related to the book that can inspire us to know more about William Thetford?
Yes, I met Bill Thetford in 1978.
Mm.
I was introduced to the course in 1977, and a year later, through a series of circumstances that I won't bore you with, I met him. I ended up at his invitation coming out to San Francisco. I lived in Denver at the time, where I am now. And we became fast friends.
Okay. Ella menciona de que ella empezó el curso de milagros en 1977 y conoció a Bill Thetford en 1978 en Denver y se hicieron muy buenos amigos después de eso.
And Bill Thetford has to be one of the loveliest, most amazing people I've ever met in my whole life, because he not only brought the course forward, he practiced it.
Bill Thetford no solamente fue una amorosa persona, sino también porque no solo estudió el libro, sino también lo practicaba.
He was before the course came along and was in his life, he was a very famous professor at Columbia University in New York.
Antes de que él hiciera el libro, él fue muy conocido, reconocida persona en su profesión en la Universidad de New York,
De Colombia.
de Colombia.
He had had several interesting jobs before that, but he was called to Columbia, and there he met Helen Schuckman.
Él tuvo muchos diversos trabajos, pero lo llamaron desde la Universidad de Colombia.
Donde conoció
Helen,
luego a
Helen, sí.
Helen worked for Bill. She was his employee. He was the head of a department, and they needed to recruit somebody who knew how to deal with children. And Helen filled that bill. So that's how she was brought into that department.
Bill was el jefe del departamento donde trabajaba y necesitaban reclutar a una persona que lo apoyara y a alguien que trabajara con niños. Por eso ella fue llevada a trabajar con Bill.
That was very much meant to be, because shortly after, she heard this voice that scared her to death, this kind of inner voice that said, "Please take notes. This is A Course in Miracles."
Esto estaba como predestinado para que sucediera, porque empezó a escuchar las voces donde le decían, por favor, toma nota.
She was totally freaked out over this. So she called Bill and told him what happened and said, "What should I do?" And he said, "Take notes and bring them in the next morning. and we'll look at them together. Don't look at them, just bring them to me and we'll look at them together.
Ella estaba totalmente nerviosa y le dijo a Bill, estoy escuchando estas voces, y entonces él le dijo, por favor, toma nota.
Well, that began the dictation of the course. Every morning for years, she would get a next little piece. She would take it in. They would lock the doors, pull down the shades. They didn't want anybody to know this was going on. And the entire course was dictated that way.
Así se inició el dictado del libro. Ella, con Bill, ella tomaba las notas y luego se lo dictaba a Bill para que lo pudiera escribir en un ambiente cerrado.
Obviously, that took a long time. Once it was finished, it's like, now what do we do with this? They met Judith Scutch. The details don't matter. She then was involved in establishing a corporation, a company, for publishing the course. And that happened in 1976.
Entonces así invitaron a Judith Scutch. Los detalles no importan. Y ella fue invitada para que a través de una corporación pudieran iniciar la publicación del libro.
There are many scholars and philosophers who think A Course in Miracles is perhaps the most important document that has appeared for thousands of years.
Muchos estudiantes, becados y profesionales se sorprendieron con este material y remarcaban que esto era una importante información que por muchísimos años había llegado para ellos.
And I would agree, having spent my entire life sort of searching at being on a spiritual path from the time I was a little girl. And when the course came into my life, I immediately knew this is it. My search is over.
Y ella, estando en su propio camino espiritual, habiendo hecho muchas búsquedas, cuando ella recibió el libro, dijo, esto es, lo que estaba buscando ha llegado a mi vida.
And Bill Thetford lived the principles of the course.
Y Bill Thetford realmente vivía los principios del libro.
And as you possibly can imagine, the core of most people's problems is relationships. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Y como pueden imaginar, el corazón en las personas, el mayor problema, el mayor reto son las relaciones.
And the course is about, of course, healing our relationships. And it's what my work is about too, because I do a great deal of counseling with people.
Y como ella, como nos podemos dar cuenta, el mayor trabajo que ella apoya en el desarrollo de las relaciones
Es
a conciliar y sanar las relaciones.
And we're asked, and we're taught in our religions that we need to forgive. In other words, that's a big word. However, we don't know what forgiveness means. We think it means pardoning. We think it means you hurt me in some way, but now I'm supposed to be okay with that and just sort of let you off the hook. That's what people think it means.
Yeah. Y la religión nos ha enseñado a que tenemos que perdonar, como si perdonando, realmente no sabemos lo que significa perdonar. Creemos que le damos eso a otras personas, pero no tenemos conciencia del significado de perdonar. Es como si dejáramos, accediéramos a que otras personas recibieran eso.
Because if we really believe that our hurt or our lack or our suffering in some way is caused by someone else, there is no way in the world that we can go, oh, okay, you've hurt me, but I guess now I'm okay with that. That's crazy.
I'm laughing, I'm sorry. Es
Worries.
como, es como si nosotros, alguien más, estoy sufriendo porque alguien más me hizo eso, porque alguien más me lastimó. Y eso es, mm, claro, that is lack of 100% responsibility, ¿eh?
I didn't, what did you say?
Playing that role like a suffering and
Yeah, it's like,
blaming someone else is lack of
exactly.
responsibility.
Yes, it's just crazy because no healing occurs that way, and it's phony and it's impossible to do.
Lo que le estaba preguntando a Carol es que cuando nosotros nos quejamos de que alguien más me está haciendo esto, alguien más me está dañando, que es falta de responsabilidad, no es sano, no es consciente y ahí no sucede la sanación, el milagro.
So here's what's really happening. Here I've got a person that I feel has hurt me in some way or insulted me, or they're the problem person. Okay, the reason why that person who behaves that way is in your life is actually for a helpful purpose.
Cuando hay alguien que me está lastimando o que estoy sufriendo por esa persona, esta persona está en mi vida porque está en mi vida y no en la otra persona.
Está para un propósito.
There
Here
is a
for
purpose for that.
purpose.
There is a purpose for that.
Yes, it's like it's so my problem person, we'll call him my problem person, is in my life as a mirror, like the mirror on the wall in your bathroom mirror or wherever you have mirrors in your house. And it's like what that person is here to mirror to us or show us something that we feel guilty about, something that we hold against ourselves. And much of that guilt is unconscious. We're aware of some guilt. We also carry guilt that we don't know is there, but it's still doing its damage to our lives.
Cuando una persona está sufriendo y se siente lastimada, esta persona está ahí porque me está mostrando un espejo de algo que es profundo, inconsciente en mí, porque no somos conscientes de esa parte inconsciente que hace que esa persona esté allí.
Okay, and you might say, well, if it's hidden, just let it stay hidden. No, because guilt is always a request for punishment, whether you know it's there or not, and we're always going to get it. So if I'm carrying guilt that I don't know is there, that means I'm constantly asking for punishment and I don't know I'm doing that. And so we go, why isn't my life working? Why are people not nice? Why don't I have enough money? Why am I sick? And it's like, it's because guilt requests punishment, and I therefore must find all the guilt I'm carrying. And that's what others help us do.
Okay. Cuando tenemos mucha culpa inconsciente, la culpa lo que atrae, lo que está pidiendo es un castigo. Y por eso es que las personas llegan a mi vida porque me están mostrando esta parte. Nosotros no somos conscientes de que estamos pidiendo castigo.
Ujú.
A-
Y
a-
esa es, wow,
So
wow.
this is absolutely critical to having a happy, peaceful, successful life. I have to discover as much guilt as possible because as I say, the guilt is a request for punishment that will always be answered. So I must discover what that is. So we pull into our lives somebody and we'll go, and this is what I will ask people when they complain about this. And they'll say, this person is so inconsiderate and selfish. So I will say, now can you ever think of a time when you've been inconsiderate or selfish? And every single person says yes.
Es muy importante, hasta crítico, de que nosotros tengamos una vida fácil, eh, en paz y feliz. Porque si nosotros estamos de la culpa, estamos pidiendo el, el castigo. Y es importante descubrir por qué yo estoy atrayendo a una persona que está en la queja.
And so here's what I
Wow.
will ask them. It's like, okay, so you've recognized that sometime you were selfish or inconsiderate. Then I ask them this. I'll say, think of an actual time when you were selfish or inconsiderate. Some scenario. It's like, don't tell me what it is. I don't want to know what it is. I just want you to think of it. And so they'll go, okay, I've got that.
Entonces, si ella encuentra una persona que se está quejando del egoísmo y de la falta de consideración, ella les pregunta a estas personas, ¿has pensado en alguna vez cuando tú has sido egoísta y desconsiderado? Las personas, sí, sí.
Now, here's a really important thing. I'll say, okay, now, back when that happened, with the frame of mind that you had and what you believed about yourself and what you thought was happening, did you have, from your perspective, any other choice but to be the way you were, whether it was selfish or inconsiderate? In other words, I will ask them, and every single person says, I couldn't have done anything else. This was the best I could do with the beliefs I held at the moment.
Entonces, en ese momento, ella le hace a las personas que se han sentido eh, que han tenido personas egoístas y no consideradas con ella, les ha preguntado, es que en ese momento donde tú te sentiste, donde tú fuiste egoísta y desconsiderada, tú en ese momento has tenido otra posibilidad de haber actuado de forma diferente. Entonces esas personas reflexionan y dicen, no, en ese momento solamente era la única opción que yo podía tener en ese momento con las creencias que tenía de la otra, de sí misma, para actuar de esa manera con los demás.
And so here's what I would then invite somebody to do is to say, if you were doing the highest and best you could do, and the other person was doing the highest and best they could do when they were doing whatever they're doing, from now on, let's reduce this from a crime, which you think you've committed, to simply a mistake because you didn't understand all that was going on.
Entonces ella ayuda a las personas para que salgan de esa creencia que han cometido un crimen y que bajen los niveles y que puedan darse cuenta que solo se trató de un error. Y entonces ya dejan de sentir ese peso para simplemente reconocer y cambiar.
We can correct a mistake. No punishment is called for. And I can recognize the other person was doing the highest and best they could do with what they believed. I keep that in mind. But I remember, if I'm mistaken, this calls for correction, not for punishment. If I were really guilty, that would call for punishment. If I'm mistaken and don't understand how something works, that calls for correction and for being enlightened to find out, well, if I'm mistaken about this, what is actually happening?
Esta es realmente una invitación para que nosotros salgamos del castigo y más bien simplemente veamos que esto solo se trató de un error que está pidiendo corrección. Tan simple como eso. Y entonces ya no nos vamos, porque todas las personas siempre actúan desde su mejor intención. Ella le llama highest investment, desde su mejor intención. Y cuando nosotros nos damos cuenta de que solo se trata de lo mejor que cada uno pudo hacer, ok, entonces vamos a corregir y eso nos saca de la culpa.
So now I can see both myself and the other person is just not understanding how life actually works.
Y entonces esto solo se trata de que faltó un entendimiento de cómo la vida trabaja. Solo se trató de eso, de una falta de entendimiento. ¿Tienes preguntas, Laura?
No, no, mientras siga hablando Carol está bien.
Ok,
We, we listen to you, Carol. Later I will have some questions.
ok, continue. You can continue, Carla. Yes,
Okay. I wasn't sure if you were finished or not. And
yes.
so part of this confusion is because we're taught that things that happened back in a past someplace are causing things that are happening in my life now. In other words, my life is unsatisfactory and I've got these problem people in my life because what happened back then is causing my distress or my lack or my whatever right now. That is a big lie. That is not what happens.
Entonces, cuando las personas están con los problemas, con confusión y con falta de calma o con carencias, cualquiera sea la situación, ella le llama es una gran mentira. Todos estos argumentos es una gran mentira.
Because if I've made up the story, and we all do, that I'm being punished or deprived or whatever today because of what happened a long time ago, and there's not anything I can do about what happened a long time ago, I'm just sunk. But that's not what's happening, because
Ajá.
here's what's happening. Listen carefully. If people can get this, it makes a difference. The past does not exist. There's not a big pile of transgressions following along behind me. The moment a word or a deed is spoken or done, it ceases to exist. It's not there. It has no causative properties whatsoever.
Cuando nosotros estamos en nuestras historias que hemos creado y estamos buscando, estamos creando la carencia y la confusión, las mentiras, ella menciona que por favor escuchemos esto con detenimiento, porque si podemos entender esto, nos va a ayudar a entender que el pasado no existe, porque son unas grandes mentiras que ya pasó y que no está en este momento. porque no ha habido ninguna transgresión.
Something that doesn't exist can't be causing my problem today. So what is happening today? And here it is. Cause and effect is like vertical rather than horizontal, like from past to future. It's actually what I believe and what I'm focusing on right now is what's causing my experience right now. It's a very real-time situation. So I have to pay attention, not to stuff in the past. I have to pay attention to, do I feel guilty today? Do I feel crummy today? Do I feel less than today? Or do I feel confident and loving and want to be helpful and want to do the best I can for myself and others? So it's my attitude today that's causing my experience today. And relationships become a helper in helping me see what I'm doing today that's causing my experience.
Ella menciona que el pasado, el presente y el futuro es horizontal, pero en realidad la causa y el efecto es vertical, porque mis creencias, donde yo estoy enfocando mis experiencias, en donde yo estoy poniendo la atención de mis pensamientos, es en la culpa, es en sentirme mal, en que me siento menos, en que me siento en confianza, amorosa. Eso es lo que realmente en el presente, en esta forma vertical de qué es lo que estoy haciendo, qué es lo que estoy pensando, que va a crear mi realidad. Wow.
Now, here's what makes this even simpler. And A Course in Miracles is, and Bill and everybody else are helping with this. And that is, okay, there's no past, there's no future, there's only now. So, and in this moment that I'm in now, I only have two choices, not millions of choices, two choices about where my attention is going to do in this only moment that exists. One, I can be egocentric. I can make it be all about the promotion and protection of my ego. Or I can follow my intuition, choose to be as helpful as I can to my fellow man. Those are the only two choices that exist. One will bring me misery. The other one is going to make my life a dream. It's going to be lovely.
Ok. Mi actitud va a crear las relaciones que yo tengo. Entonces, Bill y Helen decían de que nosotros cuando estamos en el pasado tenemos una actitud de miseria, de egocentrismo. Sí, estoy en el futuro, estoy pensando, estoy soñando y solamente tengo ahora dos opciones. Si puedo ser amorosa o puedo elegir estar en el drama. ¿Cuál de las dos es la que yo voy a elegir en este momento? Solamente debo enfocarme en este momento. El poder está en este momento.
Now, there were several reasons for writing Never Forget to Laugh. One was to show how Bill practiced the principles in A Course in Miracles, and he started out with a very, very difficult childhood, and he soared into the most loving imaginable circumstances as his life progressed. So where it was dismal in the beginning, it was glorious in the end. And that's possible for all of us.
El propósito que ella menciona es que Bill, ¿por qué le puso al libro Nunca te olvides de reír? Porque Bill se inició con una niñez muy difícil. Sin embargo, él no se quedó en esas circunstancias, sino todo lo contrario. Él saltó, voló a lo lejos para ser una gloriosa y hermosa, amorosa resultado de su vida.
The second reason for writing the book is that it's the most complete story about how A Course in Miracles was brought into the world in the first place that exists on the planet.
Y la segunda razón por la que escribió el libro es una de las más completas historias de cómo el curso de milagro está aportando a la sociedad.
And the reason for that is I was personal friends with all the players, with Bill
Ujú.
and Jerry and Judy, and I was able to interview about 28 people that were kind of the core group out in San Francisco that not only brought the course forward, but were the early practitioners of it and helped spread the word about it. So since I had access to those people, which sort of nobody else did, I thought, I have no choice but to write this because I've got information both about Bill and about the course that nobody else has got. Bill was a very dear personal friend of mine from the time I met him in 1978 until he died 10 years later. I used to go out and visit him, and he would come in San Francisco, he would come to Denver and stay with my family. And
Ujú.
it's very interesting. One of his last visits, we were sitting in the kitchen after the boys went off to school, and he said, you know, I think there's some kind of a project that we need to do together, but I have no idea what it is because I'm an extrovert. He's very much an introvert. So it's look like. And so after he passed away, I realized we do have a project to work on together, but it's after he's gone because he was very present during the writing of this book.
Ok. Ella realmente tomó la decisión de escribir este libro porque ella conoció a las 28 personas que estaban involucradas en la publicación, distribución de un curso de milagros. Ella las conocía desde que encontró a Bill y ellos estaban en San Francisco. Entonces, como ella conoció a todos estos practicantes y que estaban compartiendo la información de un curso de milagros, entonces ella dijo, realmente tengo las experiencias, porque él fue un amigo muy cercano. Él la visitaba en su familia, con su familia. Y estando en un momento en su casa, ella sintió de que ella tenía que compartir esta experiencia con los demás.
And I will tell you a last, almost unbelievable story.
Mm.
And that is, as I am completing the book, you know, it took me 2 years to do because of all of the interviews, and it's a long book, and I wanted it to be exactly right. So I'm at the very end. I'm like on writing what turned out to be the last page, and I said, and I always had the sense Bill was involved in writing this. So I said, "Okay, Bill, what is the name of your book?" Because it was in my computer, just memories of Bill, and he said, I don't hear an external voice, but the idea comes into my mind. And it was like, you'll know when you get to the end. And I said, I am at the end. I was writing I was probably on the last page or two. And he said, but you're not at the very end. It's like, okay, I'm not at the very end. But as I just found myself writing, just sort of as it was coming out, in the very last sentence, it says, and never again will we forget to laugh. And it jumped off the page at me. It's like, never forget to laugh makes me almost want to cry. It was like, there it is. He's right. He's right here. So I asked this, I feel like a nitwit, like I'm a smart person, you know, I am well educated. So it sounds like speaking to ghosts is weird, but nevertheless, that's legitimate. So anyway, I said, okay, I want a sign that absolutely you have been here the whole time helping me write this. Because with part of me, I knew that was happening, but I just wanted something else. And this is what he said. I got in my mind. He said, ask Judy Scotch Whitson, you know, who helped publish it, ask Judy about the red dress or about the plaid dress. And I thought, oh, oh dear, that is very specific. What if I asked Judy about a plaid dress? And she said, I don't know anything about a plaid dress. Does that mean all this that I was just sure he would be here was illegitimate? So it took me a couple of days before I wrote, but I did. You translate that and I'll tell you what happened next.
Um, y ella cuenta una increíble historia, porque le tomó casi 2 años hacer la entrevista, describir a todos los involucrados cuando ella iba escribiendo el libro, porque ella quería hacerlo lo más cercano a la realidad. Entonces, en la última pregunta, en la última página de cuando estaba escribiendo el libro, ella sintió y percibió en todo este tiempo la presencia de Bill. Y ella le estaba preguntando, ¿cuál va a ser el título del libro? Y él le dijo, no tanto porque le escuchara la voz, sino porque era una sensación que ya sabía lo que le estaba diciendo. Lo vas a saber solo hasta el final. Pero ya estoy en el final, ella le decía. Y él le dijo, no, cuando estés realmente en el final. Y entonces ya cuando ella estaba en el final, ella escribió, y nunca te olvides de reír. Y, em, y luego le dijo de que le preguntara a Judy acerca del vestido rojo. Y él dijo, the red dress, el vestido rojo, dijo, no, the plaid dress. Y, um, y ahí me quedé, me hizo, me, me trajo lágrimas porque realmente esto es lo que a mí me invita en el curso de milagros, a reírme y a no tomarme en serio. Y esto ya es para mí, ¿no? Okay, Carol, the plaid dress.
The
I
plaid
didn't.
dress. So a couple of days later, I get an email from Judy with a picture of her in the plaid dress and her baby sister in a little baby dress. They were 9 years apart. And this picture was the very first one that her parents had brought in the professional photographer to take a picture of their two girls. And it was one of her most priceless possessions. So it's like, no doubt in my mind that if Bill says, ask Judy about the plaid dress, and I get that kind of a response, no doubt left that Bill helped write his own book.
Ella le preguntó de qué a Judy, le envió por un correo y Judy le explicó de que era una foto donde ella estaba con sus bebitos y era la primera vez que su papá había tomado esta foto de una forma profesional. Entonces para ella fue, para Carol, fue realmente la confirmación de que esta foto es como Bill ha vivido su vida, ¿no? ¿Está claro, Laura?
La confirmación de que Bill, o sea, que Bill le respondió que sí, que él había estado acompañándola en el proceso.
Ajá. Sí, en el proceso de escribir su libro. Ajá,
Exactamente.
ajá.
So
So,
Bill lived this, and he was the perfect person to live the course because, as I say, his life was very sad and unhappy. He was 2.5 years in bed as a very sick child, and he left, as I say, in a blaze of glory. He was so high, if you will. He said, I've finally done it. I have let go of all of my grievances about everybody. And Judy and Witt said he was a tall man anyway, and he was literally up on his tiptoes. It's as if he could not even keep his feet firmly planted on the ground. He was so high, so to speak, with this fabulous sense of everything was cleaned out, everything forgiven, everything let go of, and nothing left but love itself for everything and everyone. And he died very quickly on the 4th of July. That's Independence Day in the United States. And we all laughed. It's like, I cry when I think of it. It's like Bill left and declared his own independence from all of the things that we have misunderstood about ourselves and everybody else. He left in a blaze of glory, literally on the 4th of July with fireworks in the air.
y ella lo que menciona es que realmente vivió en experiencia el libro porque él dejó ir, soltó todos sus sufrimientos, sus dolores, sus creencias acerca de lo que había sido su vida con una niñez no fácil, y que a través del resplandor de haber trabajado en él, de haber dejado ir todas esas creencias, él realmente vivió con excelencia en la práctica del curso, porque se fue un 4 de julio de 1988, que era el día de la independencia de Estados Unidos, y ellas se reían de cómo él vivió esta experiencia. No podían creerlo.
Bill's message to all of us is, paraphrasing, if I can do this, you can do this. Because life was a very difficult life. It was more difficult than most of us listening to this. I mean, unless you're in the middle of the war in the Middle East or something like that. But those of us who are living more or less normal lives, his life was harder. It was more challenging. There were more elements in it, and so on and so forth. Than many of us have to deal with. And it was all kind of part of a purposeful plan to be able to see that no matter what it's like, as we keep changing our minds, letting go of fear, choosing to see one another as valuable, and all of the things that it admonishes us to do, it's like if we will actually incorporate that attitude and let it grow and blossom, then your life, which is always a mirror, remember, your outer life is always a mirror of your inner life. So as your inner life becomes more expansive, more loving, more inclusive, more fearless, your outer life, which is an absolute identical mirror to your inner life, is going to get better and better, and good fortune falls in your lap, and just the right people show up, and your intuition is off the charts. It operates so well.
Él, Bill, realmente les decía, ¿no? Si yo puedo hacerlo, tú también lo puedes hacer. No porque estuviera en una guerra ni nada de eso, sino porque todos podemos hacerlo. Y él, a pesar de lo difícil de todas las cosas que él tuvo que hacer frente en su vida, el propósito que él le encontró con el libro fue que al margen de las circunstancias, sigue cambiando tu mente. Mira a los demás que también son una invitación para incorporar estas prácticas en nuestra actitud, para florecer al margen de las circunstancias y seguir con estas prácticas porque la intuición se desarrolla hasta tal punto que es imposible no reír.
Important for us to know that legitimate, actual, loving help is always available to us all the time, wherever we are, whatever is going on. And I can sort of end this, which is probably our time is up. I don't know. With, do you see this lamp behind me that's got the
Yes.
white shade on it?
Uh-huh.
Well, when I was living in Denver, I mean, in Florida, I'm now in Denver, that furniture behind me was my dining room furniture in the dining room. So one morning, I woke up very early, not on purpose. I didn't want to wake up at before dark, but I did. So I walked out of my bedroom and started down a hallway toward the kitchen. And on one side is the living room, and the other side was the dining room. And I had occasionally left that lamp on because I always had some light on in the middle of, in case you get up in the middle of the night and wander around. So as I was coming out of my bedroom door and starting down the hall, the thought crossed my mind, oh, got to go turn off the lamp. It turned itself off. It was like, what? So I walked around and through the door from the kitchen. I thought this bulb did not just burn out. So I flipped the switch, it came back on. And moving along that table, there's a kind of a long table up against that wall. And as I walked toward it, I had the very strong sense of Bill, a couple of other people. I couldn't see them, but I could sense them. And they all said, this is just so you'll know we're all here and everything's. It was one of the most astonishing experiences in my life. But that was Bill and Jerry and a couple of other guys. It's like, this is just, we are always here. And it's like, we need to know loving support and help is always here for us, but we have to give to others what we want to experience because that's the way we keep it in our minds. So if we want to see the best in others, if we want to be helpful, if we want their lives to be richer and better and more comforted. In other words, when we have their welfare in mind and we treat them that way and we think about them that way, our wonderful life and all that we need to live the life that allows us to give our gifts is automatically just going to show up from we don't know where. But the guarantee is when our purpose is to live out of these principles, we will get more help than we will even know what to do with. We don't have to wonder where it comes from or why or how. We just have to keep focused on, I'm here to be truly helpful. Whoever is coming into my life is here because I need to see them kindly and appropriately and follow my intuition about how I might be helpful to them in some way. And then you just watch good fortune show up in your life.
Okay.
What can I say?
Ella contaba una historia de cuando ella estaba en Florida, porque ahorita ella vive en Denver. Era la lámpara que ven en la lado, bueno, ahorita yo la veo en el lado derecho, esa lámpara blanquita, está acostada en una mesa larga. Ella no quería levantarse tan temprano, pero se levantó en la mañana, casi madrugada, y entonces se fue caminando. Ella dejaba la lámpara prendida por si tenía que ver, pero en ese momento ella miró la lámpara y dijo, ay, tengo que apagar. la lámpara, pero la lámpara se apagó solita. Y ella dijo, ¿qué? Y se acercó para ver si el foco no se había malogrado, y en ese momento se percibió que Bill Thetford estaba allí, junto con otras personas más, y él le hizo sentir de que ella no estaba sola, que siempre está acompañada por él y muchas más personas que ella conoce. Lo que ella nos invita es a siempre estamos con personas amorosas a nuestro alrededor, y siempre que demos todos nuestros regalos que tenemos en la vida, siempre estemos mirando y ayudando a las personas con nuestros regalos, vamos a cumplir el propósito que cada uno ha venido a hacer, que nosotros mantengamos la intención de estar presentes, y como la oración dice, estoy aquí para ser únicamente útil, para ayudar, y entonces la buena fortuna siempre se va a presentar en nuestras vidas, porque solamente dando a los demás es que nosotros vamos a recibir, de una manera que estamos buscando que todas las mentes reciban eh, todo lo bueno que nosotros tenemos para dar, y va a ser dar y recibir. Ajá. Ok.
Any last question? I mean, this is what the course is all about, letting go of my guilt, and my relationships are my greatest aid in discovering what I need to let go of. And then the highest and best way I can treat all the people that I interact with, everybody wins, nobody loses.
No. Dejar ir la culpa y buscar la mayor inversión para dar a todos los demás, donde todos ganen. Esto es lo que realmente propone el curso de milagros en simplicidad. Y entonces ella está lista para saber si hay preguntas de
De
nosotros.
hecho, las que tenía anotadas ya las fue ella contestando. Por ahí que si quiere desplayarse un poco más respecto de esto de cuando uno sana la mente, porque la idea es sanar la mente, pero de pronto vemos los efectos afuera también, ¿no? Como
Ujú,
esto
ujú,
último que dijo.
ujú. Carol, all the questions that she had, you were answering by all the things that you mentioned. However, healing the mind, what suggestions could you give us for healing our mind? Do you have any
This
comment
whole
about?
process is for healing the mind. A healed mind is the result of following these ideas, because what has to be healing the mind is equivalent to letting go of guilt.
Okay.
That's how the mind gets healed. And we've spoken about a process that helps you let go of guilt. So you might call all of this a healing process.
Mhm.
Sí, por ahí mi pregunta apuntaba más al tema de los efectos. O sea,
Okay. She was asking more about how to be at ease when you see guilt is there. Perhaps, de repente lo que estás preguntando es cómo actuar cuando ves que estás ahí
eh,
en la...
no, voy a intentar decirla en inglés, a ver
Ujú,
si Carol me entiende.
ujú,
You talk, or the course speaks about healing the mind with the forgiveness, as you spoke. But many times we say, well, out there is nothing, ¿no? There is nothing out there, or the effects. O sea, we can see the effects of healing our mind outside. That mirror that we see, then it changes. Not only changes my mind, but changes outside.
Okay, I'm not quite, I didn't hear all of that exactly. So maybe you can help me translate what seems still to be missing. In other words, the our lives will continue automatically to get better, things get healed, everything works out, and so on and so forth, as I keep discarding my guilt or my low self-esteem. Now, I cannot do that by myself. I have to be, it has to be how I decide that I'm going to let go of what I'm blaming myself for. And I do that by stopping blaming other people who are my mirror. In other words, I will have people in my life that mirror both what's right about me and what I fear about me. So rather than trying to get rid of the people that I find disturbing, I need to learn from them, because what is disturbing about them is what I'm holding on to. So they're mapping for me what I need to do internally, and I do that in conjunction with reducing whatever they're doing from a really terrible, awful thing to they're doing the highest and best they're able to do with the programming they've got. Same for me. Up to this point, I've been doing the highest and best I've been able to do. But as I keep changing my mind and letting go of my guilt, and then you will notice that your relationships are always going to very either dramatically or subtly reflect your relationship with yourself.
Lo que ella está diciendo es que nosotros no sanamos la mente en nosotros. Nosotros lo hacemos a través de las personas que nos rodean. Nosotros tenemos que dejar ir la culpa inconsciente, la baja autoestima, y eso se hace justamente con las personas que están a nuestro alrededor, pero no lo hacemos en los demás, sino que hay en mí que esto va a ir desapareciendo de una forma dramática o sutil, pero son los cambios que yo hago en mí y los demás me ayudan a reflejar mi trabajo interno. ¿Está claro, Laura?
Sí, sí, perfecto. Okay, thank you.
Y eso,
everything clear? You see, all you have to remember is there's never an accident about the people in our lives, whether they're family members, neighbors, people we work with, somebody on TV. If we find them annoying, or we don't like them, or we don't want to have anything to do with them, it's because they're too accurately triggering what I hold against myself. Now, we may not recognize that, but that's why they are annoying. They're triggering my guilt. I'm uncomfortable when I'm feeling guilty. And so we say, that person makes me uncomfortable. No, they don't. They're triggering your guilt, which is what makes you uncomfortable.
Las personas que se están quejando, que tienen problemas, que yo observo que ellos me están molestando en su comportamiento. Lo único que ellos están haciendo es activando mi baja autoestima, mi sentimiento de culpa. Y eso es realmente lo que yo necesito trabajar en mí, pero no son en ellos. Carol, that is atonement. The atonement.
I'm sorry?
That is the atonement.
Yes,
no?
of course, because the atonement means the correction of errors. In
Y
other
más.
words, it's like it's yes, it's the correction of errors. Well, if I'm carrying things that I don't know I need to correct, that's a problem. But people will help me see what I need to correct. And it's never about blame, and it's never about wrongness or sin or anything else. It's about my early programming left me with beliefs about myself that aren't true, negative things about myself that aren't true. Same for everybody in the world. Well, when I carry unconscious, inaccurate beliefs, they're going to be as damaging to my peace of mind and my life and everything else as ones I may know about. So I must become acquainted with guilt that I'm carrying that I don't know is there, so that I can release it, since nobody but me can release it. Relationships help me see what I cannot otherwise see in myself.
Las relaciones me ayudan a sanar toda esa parte inconsciente de culpa, de estar equivocada, de enfermedad. Son mis programaciones iniciales, inconscientes, donde yo no me siento bien, porque son justamente estas personas, amistades, que me están mostrando esas creencias que no me traen paz y que están solamente en la mente. Eso es el propósito de las relaciones.
So relationships are our way home in our time and space world.
So, las relaciones son el camino a casa. El camino a casa, a la paz. Las relaciones es el camino a la paz.
And we recognize, in addition, that everybody, remember this, is always doing the highest and best of which they are capable with the programming that's running them, i.e., with the guilt, with the confusion, with the lack of understanding. Everybody's doing the best they can do.
Todos, y es importante recordar que todos están haciendo lo mejor que ellos pueden con la culpa y la falta de darse cuenta de lo que están eligiendo.
Now, one more thing that I need to say, and then I have to go. When we are upset with somebody else, it's not really them, they're triggering my own guilt and thus my own upset. But when I am upset, unfortunately, most people are taught, or it's modeled for them, run to your addictions, distract yourself, don't let yourself feel how you feel. And distractions come in many forms. That has to stop. I have to stop distracting myself and allow myself to really feel what I'm actually feeling, what emotions are actually there. I'll tell you some more in a minute.
Generalmente las personas nos distraemos en lugar de parar, hacer un alto y observar cuáles son las emociones en mí que están generando esta situación. No afuera, sino parar y mirar hacia adentro.
Anger is a top-level emotion. Anger comes from feeling powerless. Like, I need for something to be different, and I don't know how to force it to be different or make it be different. So the first thing one must do when you feel angry is don't pretend it away. Don't look the other way. Actually do what's necessary to discharge the anger. Run, swim, go to the gym, pound on the bed with the tennis racket, do whatever you need to do to get that emotional energy discharged out of the body. That's step one.
Ya. Cuando uno siente cólera y se siente que no tiene el poder para poder superarlo, lo primero que hay que hacer es soltar esa cólera caminando, corriendo, nadando, haciendo diferentes actividades donde uno pueda soltar esas emociones. ¿Sí?
Kind of underneath the anger are the deeper feelings of hopelessness, despair, like inability to function kind of thing. And when those are being generated, in other words, okay, I've kind of discharged the anger, and now the hopelessness and the sadness and the despair that may be there, instead of hiding it and pushing it away or blaming it on somebody else, you need to kind of pull in that experience of sadness or something with no story about what you think it's about, because it's never what you think it's about. So the first thing you must do is allow yourself to fully feel your emotions with no commentary.
Uh-huh. Cuando una persona se siente indefensa, lo primero que tiene que hacer antes de observar la historia es relajarse y poder ser consciente de todas esas ideas que están pasando, sin juzgarlas, solo con observar.
Oh, okay. So in any event, once your body chemistry is settled and you're kind of feeling more or less normal, then you look at the stories you believe about yourself, which are always going to be incorrect. And it's something that's actually causing your pain. Your guilt, your false beliefs about yourself are the actual cause. We blame it on other people, other situations, other countries. We blame it on all kinds of other stuff, but it's actually an internal process. We try to force it away, but it's really what the stories that we believe about what's wrong with us, how I can't do things right, how I'm not attractive, how blah, 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 fill in the blank. And those stories must be discovered and discarded, not covered up and your focus going someplace else, because those stories are going to continue to negatively impact your life, whether you're consciously aware of them or not, which is why you want to be made consciously aware of them through the people that we think are a problem. We need to be aware so that we can allow and cooperate with the healing process. If we'll stop fighting against it, the healing can happen on its own.
Lo que ella menciona es que cuando nosotros observamos la química de nuestro cuerpo, vamos a poder observar toda la culpa, los juicios, las mentiras que nos dicen que somos incorrectos. Todo eso va a salir, pero que observemos porque realmente eso no es verdad. Pero es a través de la observación y de hacernos conscientes acerca de descubrir y soltar estas historias, porque solamente son historias negativas que no éramos conscientes, que impactan la vida. Y cuando nos hacemos conscientes de esas creencias que son muy sutiles, es cuando realmente nos estamos haciendo el cambio y ahí es donde la sanación se empieza a dar. Uh-huh.
Most of us are taught, stuff your emotions, hold them in, don't let anybody see you be upset, and so on. That's the worst advice you can ever have. And don't pass it on to anybody else, because just because you stuff it doesn't mean it goes away. You end up with physical problems, mental problems, relationship problems, financial problems. All those kinds of problems are going to come from not dealing directly with what you feel and ultimately where you think it comes from, and allow all that healing to occur. But if you're not going to pay attention to it and follow through with the process of acceptance, acceptance doesn't mean you think it's a great idea and you love that it's there. Acceptance means this is what my experience is now. I will fully own it, and I will fully kind of cooperate with what's called for. So if you're sad, be sad, cry. If you're angry, run around the block, pound on the bed with a tennis racket. In other words, allow the body chemistry to settle. For one reason, when you're in an upset state, you drop a bunch of adrenaline into the body, the stress response is turned on, and guess what? When you turn on the stress response, 40% of your brain goes offline. You cannot think straight. The whole frontal lobe, it's kind of like, okay, we don't need to be thinking now because we have an emergency at the gate kind of thing. That's what the body thinks when under circumstances like that. You've got to let everything settle. Get your body chemistry back to normal. Turn your brain back on. Turn your digestive system back on. Let everything operate as normal. And then once things have settled, then you can look at whatever your issue at hand is in a sane and helpful manner.
Las mujeres, nosotros tendemos a mantener las emociones escondidas, no reconocidas. Y esto es lo peor que podemos hacer, y es importante que no lo transfiramos a nadie más, que eso más bien, esa parte física de los cambios que se están dando en nuestro cuerpo, sea por problemas físicos, por las relaciones, por temas financieros, por cualquier tipo de problema, nosotros lo que tenemos que observar es poner la atención y aceptar, porque eso nos va a ayudar a hacernos responsables de todo lo que, de todo lo que podamos decir, la tristeza, todo lo que nuestro cuerpo se está mostrando. Es importante que demos el espacio y el permiso para poder reconocerlo. ¿Por qué? Porque cuando el cuerpo se está elevando, sobre todo en esta parte frontal del cerebro, la adrenalina exacerba al cerebro, y lo que tenemos que observar es eso justamente para poder bajar y podernos darnos cuenta de que no necesitamos alterar la química de nuestro cuerpo, sino más bien hacernos conscientes y poder cambiar.
And in closing, A Course in Miracles is the best thing I know on the planet to show us how to change our minds. Bill Thetford was such a perfect example of how it was for somebody who actually put it into practice and came to a glorious life as it unfolded. So both of those can be so helpful to the rest of us, not only the theory and the practice of what to do, and here is, oh, look, this is what can happen when you actually do these things. And think.
Y Bill Thetford era justamente el ejemplo de que no solamente él estudiaba el libro, sino lo ponía en práctica, porque fue así como vivió la vida que le tocó vivir, maravillosa, alegre.
Well, thank you, ladies.
Thank you so much.
I hope you have a wonderful rest of your afternoon or evening or wherever you are. And
Very
I'll,
No,
much. Very,
thank you.
very nice to talk to you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
what did she say?